Just-in-Time Productions now gives you a PowerPoint presentation on V&T Coach 17, featuring a good deal of its earlier life. Let's see. That. Let's try that. Hello. Anybody home?
That's really good, Kyle.
Oh,
Thank you.
there. That's up. Good. Technology. Don't we love it? Well, first I want to talk a little bit about passenger car design. In the 1860s, it went through quite a bit of change. At the beginning of the decade, the arched roof car was the typical car. This is sort of what it looked like on the inside of a typical coach. Lots of different styles, changes. The siding going towards the siding that we recognize from the earlier sidings. Here are some Sacramento Valley coaches showing some of the earlier designs. Central Pacific, their earliest coaches were all arched roof cars, much like this. Just a simple slight arch across the top. Even their immigrant cars came out that way. But early in the decade, some changes started happening. In the East, they started putting in clerestories. Initially, they used monitor roofs like this one, but the idea was to get more light and ventilation into the car. So here's some examples of monitor roof cars. This is what the inside of a monitor roof car looks like. Union Pacific monitor roof car. And then also they experimented with duckbill roofs, like this one, and some hooded roof, sort of a duckbill, this Pennsylvania car, and of course the V&T's duckbill roof cars from Kimball. So a little scene of Central Pacific and Union Pacific cars. You can see a variety of arched roof and monitor roof and duckbill cars spread around there. Railroad started building some of their own. This was a Union Pacific built car. And this is what the inside looked like on that one. Central Pacific purchased their early cars from the East after the initial cars that they built. I think they built from kits, actually, that were delivered to California and then assembled. But this is what the Wasson cars looked like that were delivered after the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. So all starting from the depot, up over the mountains, and across the deserts. In 1868, the Central Pacific had heard about these clerestory roof cars, and so they started building a few coaches of their own with clerestory roofs. Now, they hadn't actually seen one of these cars, and they didn't exactly know how they were built, so they sort of figured it out. Basically, they took their arched roof car and they blasted a clerestory through it. And here you can see a variety of clerestory and arched roof cars together. You can see that there's not much difference in the curve of the basic roof, and they just cut the carlins and push a clerestory up through it. Again, here, a mixture of cars. Also, I want to talk about business cars, because in the context here, a lot of railroads operated directors' cars, is what they were called. Here's an early layout from the 1850s of a floor plan for a director's car from the B&O Railroad. The Lincoln car, which was built during the Civil War with a monitor roof, later became a Union Pacific car, business car, although it was not at Promontory during the ceremony. Again, another shot when it was brand new. This is a drawing of what we believe the floor plan of that car looked like. 2 parlors at either end and a stateroom in the center. It didn't have a kitchen because they wasn't expecting the president to travel very far in it. Certainly not overnight or anything. Or they could stop along the way at eating establishments. As it happened, Lincoln never rode the car, except after his death. This is some furniture that was in the car that the Union Pacific Museum still has. This will give you some idea of furnishings that would be placed in cars at this time, including, I believe, the 17. These are sort of general examples, not specific examples. But we do know that they had some couches and some lounges because we have the vouchers for that. More on that later. This is the Chicago and Northwestern director's car, built in late 1867. Another shot of it and the interior of the car. This car features a passageway all the way through the center of the car. Union Pacific director's car, often referred to as Bushnell's car. Bushnell was one of the directors of the railroad, and he happened to use the car on a tour. Here's the interior of the car during Bushnell's tour, and interior a little bit later with some of the officials of the Union Pacific. A shot showing Bushnell's car, its support car, and the 2 other cars that were at Promontory. The other 2 cars were executive sleeping car number 29 and a Pullman hotel car. We haven't yet identified exactly which car that one is. Other railroads also had directors' cars. This is the interior of the CP&Q director's car when it visited California in 1869, shortly after the completion of the railroad. Some other superintendent's cars. Sometimes they would just build the cars so that you would walk through the center. Sometimes they would have a separate sleeping area with a corridor along the side. This one is more simple with just the center walk-through. Some other cars, a Pennsylvania Division superintendent's car, and a much later CP&Q car. Probably similar to the Central Pacific car was the car that D.O. Mills had built by Harlan and Hollingsworth, and here's the floor plan. The biggest difference probably is the proportion of the different rooms and the fact that they've divided the sleeping area into 2 separate rooms, whereas on the Central Pacific car, it was a single room. A couple other pictures of that car when it reached California. It was the acquisition of this car that probably freed up the old Central Pacific car for sale to the VNT. Because by that time it appears that the Central Pacific had sold the car to AAA Cohen and perhaps also D.O. Mills himself. Some other cars, even narrow gauge cars, Milton Latham's car on the North Pacific coast. Here's a view of the kitchen end. You'll see there's a center door and a side door. The side door for the corridor, the center door serving the kitchen. At the other end, there was a larger observation platform and a side-mounted door. These photos, incidentally, are from the movie Iron Horse, shot in the 1920s by John Ford about building the Transcontinental Railroad. And an interior view of the car. Side view of it in later years. Central Pacific also built a few cars shortly after the completion of the railroad. The pay car here, styled after the Wasson coaches, but a little bit longer. Here it is a little bit later with the roof update.
You can see the, whoa. fix it, I broke it.
We'll try this one.
Kyle, maybe you just inadvertently push the button down as a.
Cigarette.
We'll just use this one. In any case, you can see two doors in the end so that people can come in to get their pay and then walk out a different door. Here's the same pay car during the Pullman strike in Sacramento. In 1872, the Central Pacific built a new director's car. This also tended to make the earlier car surplus because the car that became Coach 17 started out as a director's car for the Central Pacific before replaced by this car. The second director's car had a long history. Here it is, much modified in later years in the 20th century. Governor Stanford had a custom car built for himself in 1882 in the Central Pacific shops. A couple of shots of it here. So, the Central Pacific built the car in their own shops. Here's some of the things that they purchased in order to equip the car. A lot of kitchen utensils. There's the stove for the kitchen here, and also, I believe, the heating stove that was in the parlor. Both identified and listed here. We may actually be able to figure out what those look like. And a lot of the kitchen utensils also listed here. More crockery and kitchen equipment on this voucher. And then some of the furniture, including lounges and beds for the car, all listed out here on the vouchers at the Central Pacific. Carpets, more bedding, linens for the car. So this is what we believe the car looked like, including what we think the floor plan looked like when it was built in 1868. Thanks to Mike Collins. And we've actually found evidences of the partition that separates the bedroom from the corridor on the side. We've found the location of the cross partitions. We're not 100% sure about the kitchen and about the saloon, the toilet at the end. We're still doing assessments of what we've got and what we think we've got. But we have found locations for a lot of the partitions. There's scars in the car that help identify those locations. So here's the trip to Promontory provides the first photographs of the car. As some of you may know, they had a little altercation in the Truckee River Canyon, and their special engine got lame, and so they tacked the two cars onto the end of the regular passenger train for most of the trip across Nevada. And so here, bringing up the rear, are the two cars. A couple other shots here at Carlin. The cars are at the end of the train. And again at Carlin, the water tanks. We used a lot of these photos to try and figure out locations of lamps and stoves and other such things. And so we have a series of these photographs where we've tried to mark things, figuring out between grains of silver, deconstructing
Not both mics.
Oh, you take all the sport out of it. Deconstructing what the car looked like. Another shot here at Elko, headed east rather. By the time they got to Camp Victory, the regular passenger train had terminated, so they were working as a special train up here. And by this time, the Jupiter was pulling the train.
We don't know when the Jupiter was actually coupled to the cars. I suspect it may well have been at Elko. Again, looking at some of the location of stoves and lamps, the car would have used candle lanterns, so it would have had smaller stacks than oil lamps that would have been applied later. Again, a shot at Monument Point. And again, looking at some of the different accoutrements. We're fortunate that with all the different photographs, we actually do have a few photos of each side. We wish we had more. There are things that are still not particularly clear, but there's an awful lot that we've been able to get out of good copies of these photos. Again, some other views at Monument Point. And then the last act, here's the car at Promontory at the end of the ceremonies. And again, figuring out what different things are and where they are. A.J. Russell took a photo of the car in August of 1869 when U.S. Senator Patterson was on an excursion to California, and we've used that. We've already found some things are changing. They're already making modifications to the car by this time. In 1870, it was photographed going through Reno. And again, we can see on the part of the car that shows up in the photo a few other modifications that are going on. This is the last photo that we have of the car until it's a coach. So in December 75, A.A. Cohen sells the car to the Virginian Truckee. We're not entirely sure how it is that A.A. Cohen ended up with the car to sell, but we suspect that the Central Pacific had disposed of it when they got their other car. Also, we know that Charles Crocker had sold out his interest to his partners, but then in the Depression of 1873, they couldn't pay, and so he had to come back in as a full partner in the railroad at that time. It's always possible that this car ended up going to him at some time, particularly since a lot of references are to it as Charlie Crocker's car. In newspapers, on official records, even one of the early CP vouchers when it's being constructed refers to it as Crocker's car. The V&T spent some money fixing up the car after they received it. It had been worn and a bit tired. At least according to Yerington, it was in very poor shape, cosmetically at least. So here an accounting of the parts and pieces in December and January that the V&T used in their shops fixing up the car. They had initially had the car lettered by the Central Pacific with the name Bonanza as on the car. Somebody apparently took exception to that because almost immediately that got changed and it was renumbered as number 25 and the name Bonanza was removed. The V&T also purchased new carpets for the old Crocker car, some tassels and some other fittings from the Central Pacific. Fairly early, John Mackey used the car to go to the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia. And here's an accounting of his trip as far as Chicago and back. So the car was purchased because Senator Sharon needed a car to go to Washington, but it was a V&T private car, and so was used by many different people, including Yerington, including even D.O. Mills on occasion. Then in 1878, By that time, Sharon had purchased his own Pullman car. Apparently an 1868 railroad-built car was not considered the height of elegance in 1878 Washington, D.C. So the V&T converted it to a coach, and here is the entry, $3,196.84. This is based on the newspaper articles. This will give you an idea of what it probably looked like at the time of his conversion. The whole train was painted in this maroon with the light-colored trucks. This is probably one of the earliest photos that we have of the car after it's a coach. It's taken by Crockwell. It's 1888 to 1890, somewhere in that vicinity. Here's a close-up of the car, along with the Kimball Coach 3 that's been lettered for a smoking car. And we have some articles about that. And then on into later years, this is how it looked at the end of service in 1938. This is an interior view as a coach in 1938. This is how Mike drew up the car basically as it is today, except that he didn't draw in the ancillary support structures that have been added in recent years. And with that, I conclude my talk. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions for Kyle?
Yeah, I've heard that the car, this car, when it went to Promontory, was for hauling like food and things like that, produce. Do you have any information on that?
We have a description at the time. Yeah.
We have a description of the subsistence car, as it was called, at the time that it was built. It had a number of different compartments for food, zinc line things to keep meat fresh, cages for live poultry. It also had sleeping quarters for the crew of the train, for the steward and the cook. So in the original configuration, the car actually entered service in the fall of 1868. The subsistence car is built in February of '69. And I believe what was going on was for longer trips across the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific, going through territory where there wasn't necessarily a lot of civilization and support, they felt that they needed to carry all their provisions with them. And the Union Pacific also had built a subsistence car for their director's car. And when Bushnell did his tour, they used the subsistence car on that one also. So we have some description. We don't know exactly how long the car was yet. We're still trying to figure that out. Eventually we'd like to draw it up, but we want to get a little bit more information before we commit it.
Kyle, any information on what happened to the car after the sale of the Crocker's car?
We don't know exactly, and I think that before, I think that the subsistence car became just a standard baggage car, and I think that occurred by the early 70s, probably sometime before the sale to the V&T. By the time they had enough support facilities along the way, then they probably didn't need it, and tagging along the extra car probably became a problem for them. That's a guess.
What was the color of the roof when it was converted to a coach?
What was the color of the roof when it was converted to a coach? I don't know. We'll have to do some paint research on that since the roof's still on there. It might still be there.
There's no paint.
No paint?
There's no paint left on the roof from the
Oh.
coach time. Yeah.
So we'll have to be really creative to find some little remnants or make some educated guesses.
What is the roof made of?
Turn metal. So it's soldered, lead washed iron sheet.
So sort of like tin plate, except it's turn plate. It's a slightly different coating than tin plate.
And do you know when is that the original roof or that additional roof?
We believe it's the original roof. Typically those roofs, one of the reasons that they use those roofs is because they lasted a long time and they held up well.
As far as the sleeping quarters, I've heard that they had a lot of bunks in that car.
Well, on the voucher that we have for equipping the car, I don't know that I would call it lots of bunks. They had 2 beds in the bedroom, and then they had some lounges that converted into beds in the parlor. And according to one report of one of the guys on the way to Promontory, he said that the car slept 10. So I'm guessing 2 people in each of the beds, and 2 people on many of the lounges probably too. They had to be friendly.
Kyle, what period did you say it was Leonard Bonanza, and how long did
I think it was Leonard Bonanza for a matter of a week or 2. I think it got lettered in December of '75 before it was delivered to the V&T, and it was re-lettered by the Central Pacific, I think in the 2nd week of January. So I think the only time that it may have operated with that name on it might have been when Yarrington first came up with it from Sacramento, and it's even possible that it got relettered before he left.
And the color of the car at that point?
We found yellow paint underneath the maroon paint, but very, very little of it.
So the Central Pacific colors would have been a canary yellow, probably, and it's sounding like it may have still been that. As I say, we have no photographs of it from 1870 until about 1888. So we only have newspaper descriptions in that time period.
What did the newspaper call it?
Pardon?
What did the newspaper call it?
What, the car?
AAR.
Well, one newspaper editor who had an axe to grind made some snide remarks about the private car, K-E-E-R, that Yarrington had come up with, and mentioned in passing that the railroad had recently removed the advertising from his paper. But he was impartial, you understand. Yes.
Who was Cohen?
Pardon?
Who was Cohen?
AAA Cohen. A.A. Cohen was the guy who had founded the San Francisco and Alameda. He lived in Alameda, was a capitalist there, had founded the San Francisco and Alameda Railroad and had acquired the San Francisco and Oakland, and then turned around and sold them to the Central Pacific and became a functionary for the Central Pacific. In 1875, we know that D.O. Mills acquired a new private car, but as far as Harlan and Hollingsworth was concerned, it was A.A. Cohen that bought the car. And we know from correspondence that Cohen and Mills and perhaps some other people were partners in that Harlan and Hollingsworth car. By mid-76, 1876, the AAA Cohen and the Central Pacific Associates have gotten sideways with each other and devolved into litigation. Mills' comments to Yarrington that it was made it very awkward for him being partners in the car with Cohen at the same time that the Central Pacific and Cohen are at legal loggerheads. I believe that in 1877, the car is sold to the Central Pacific and becomes the California at that time. I'm not 100% sure. There is some speculation that Leland Stanford might have purchased a duplicate from Harlan and Hollingsworth in 77, but my own opinion is probably that it is the D.O. Mills car that becomes the California on the Central Pacific in 77. In the annual report, they mention acquiring the car, but the context in which they do it suggests that it's a second-hand car, not a brand new car when they acquire it. Because they're purchasing other things brand new and they say who manufactured it when it's new.
Could you give a quick rundown on the history of the car between 38 when it was taken out of service and when it ended up at the museum?
Okay. The car was purchased by 20th Century Fox in 38, first used in Jesse James, was in a number of other movies. I don't have a good thorough list of that at this point, but there were a number of other movies. In the 70s, the studios in general were disposing of their railroad assets. This car ended up the property of Shortline Enterprises. They had it up at Jamestown for some years with the rest of their equipment for movie work. It was used in the Kenny Rogers The Gambler TV special series. And then in, I believe it's 87, 88, it was sold to the Nevada State Railroad Museum along with the rest of the V&T collection from Shortline Enterprises and came up here then. I'm sure there are others that have a more detailed accounting of those years than I do.
Many of the pictures of cars in this period of time we're talking about have four-wheel trucks, but a few of them have six-wheel trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any examples of four-wheel truck cars being converted to six-wheel trucks?
Yes. The original Silver Palace cars built for the Central Pacific by Jackson and Sharp and Harlan and Hollingsworth were all delivered with four-wheel trucks. In 1875 and 76, they purchased some additional sleeping cars from Barney and Smith. These arrived on six-wheel trucks, and from photographic evidence, we know that all of the earlier cars were converted to six-wheel trucks, all the earlier Silver Palace sleeping cars. I don't know whether that was before or immediately after the build of the Barney and Smith cars, but by that time we see photos of them in trains together, and they all have six-wheel trucks.
Was that because some weight was added along the way to the cars, or just gave a better ride, or what?
I think it gave a better ride, and the six-wheel truck, of course, is also a longer wheelbase, which makes a difference in the ride, as well as then spreading the weight a bit more. So there are several different things that may have helped there. There are other examples of four-wheel truck cars getting converted to six-wheel trucks, including in more modern times some Harriman cars that were upgraded as all-day lunch cars, some of which were converted to six-wheel trucks to carry the added weight and air conditioning.
Thank you very much.
Kyle. That was great. I was really always interested in that car, and there's a lot of missing pieces of information, and I think he's filled in most of them for us. Just one little, since we got a little bit of extra time, I just wanted to bring one point out to you. A lot of times during the conference, I'm kind of a weak-minded guy, you know, and we correspond over the year, back and forth, and I try to keep up with all your questions and any needs. But if you grab me at this conference and ask me to do you a favor or send you something or remember something, I'm going to forget it. Unless I get it in writing and lock it in, and then when I get home, I'll do it. But if you ask me to do something that I don't, and you haven't gotten anything within a week or two from me,